All right, we are back, and let's talk about cross-promotional stuff because it's happened in wrestling for a very long time, and it's been very prominent so far within the scope of wrestling. WWE's being a lot more open about doing things with other people. AEW's been doing it for a while, and I kind of want to look at the benefit and the downfall of each of them because they're really case studies in one way or another. But let's just at least do a brief history on it because it's always been really big when it came to cross-promotional stuff.
Now, believe it or not, WWE has been very instrumental in they have a long history of doing cross-promotional stuff. Like their recent, because you got to think about it too. It's not just cross-promotional in terms of other wrestling organizations, but literally WrestleMania was founded upon cross-promotional stuff.
Right. I mean, Muhammad Ali was there. Liberace was there. There were like a lot of big names. They weren't wrestling necessarily, but they were there. I'm talking about more like competition-based stuff. Because that, once again, is also important. You had Bob Backlund and Harley Race. I don't believe the WWF at that time was part of the NWA, but that was a very big match. But they always did stuff with the NWA until there was that big falling out. Obviously, Antonio Inoki and Muhammad Ali had their fight, despite what you believe. This was an enormous draw internationally. People don't realize how big Antonio Inoki was in Japan. Like, crazy big. Lawrence Taylor and Bam Bam Bigelow had their match. Lawrence Taylor was an NFL player. He was not the only one who competed at that year's WrestleMania, but this was the big match. And what I love is that Lawrence Taylor said that between wrestling and doing football, wrestling was infinitely harder. He even said, it's like, I couldn't walk after that match with Bam Bam Bigelow. And so just keep that in mind. This is an NFL legend in Lawrence Taylor. Come on. With this one is kind of interesting because Dan Severn had history here. So in this picture, he has the NWA World Heavyweight Champion in one hand. The championship on his shoulder was actually the UFC Heavyweight Champion. He was their main champion. I don't know what the belt is on the other side. I think that's another UFC. And then there was another promotional belt around his waist. And he competed in the WWF. That was a Jim Cornette idea to bring in Dan Severn. Dan Severn, I would not want to meet him in the back alley, even though he looks like a 80s porn star in this because of the mustache. This guy is incredible. He was a very decorated wrestler. And so this was a very rare circumstance in the 90s, especially in the Attitude Era, where they had somebody do this because he was so actively fighting and defending the NWA belt and competing in the WWF. So that is really crazy there.
I mean, a lot of people do forget that the WWE does a lot of cross promotion.
They really do. It's not like that. That's like a little pigeonhole that you always do. It's a little bit harder for the WWE wrestlers to do something outside, not because they can't. It's because they're on the road 300 days a year. How are you going to find the time?
Their schedule is busy enough as it is, and yes, they do have exclusive contracts too, but they get paid very handsomely.
They have
for those exclusive contracts,
and you also have the WWE marketing machine behind you. You can make yourself into a megastar. We had the Floyd Mayweather Big Show, I believe. If I'm not mistaken, to this point, this was the largest gate in WrestleMania history because of the Floyd Mayweather Big Show match.
Well, it was up until WrestleMania.
Well, I'm just saying that to this point, this was the largest gate. WWE and TNA's current working relationship. So now we're going to get into modern history because now this is sort of where it gets a little bit different. WWE has not poached any talent from TNA yet.
No.
They have not, and you don't think that they have the money to do this. Come on. They allowed Mickie James to make an appearance at the Royal Rumble during the McMahon era. Now, that was already
a different circumstance.
Well, that was already put in the contract. Like, she's like, I want to make an appearance at the Royal Rumble. They were cool with it. That happened. But it was something very interesting. It was like, this is a contracted TNA wrestler wrestling in WWE. Especially with their history, that's kind of crazy. And then now we have everything that's happening with
And
Jordan
it's-
Grace in the Royal Rumble. We had Jordan Grace competing for a women's champion in NXT. Joe Hendry and Frankie Kazarian making their appearances. And now I want you to look at all of these things and say, what did TNA get out of it? Because that is an important question. Gigantic ratings for NXT, viral videos on all social media platforms that TNA has been and can use because it's their talent. They have every right to do so. So that's big promotion for them. And then TNA Plus had the most subscriptions for Against All Odds than the last 4 big events. That's including the Slammiversary. That's including Hard to Kill when they rebranded. That's including the show that we just did, Bound for Glory or whatever, combined.
Right.
Combined. And their ratings are better than they ever have been.
And we alluded to this earlier about the potential for there being a bigger TV rights contract
for TNA
when the time comes. Now the thing too is that I think that the WWE is also providing other resources, like their live events division. I think is involved in some of TNA stuff. I don't know, like I don't know if WWE is going to buy TNA or if they are like a party to the contract. There's a lot of backstage stuff that we don't know. But yeah, TNA and WWE working together just seemed like a natural extension, especially since TNA Plus uses Endeavor infrastructure. Right.
And also with WWE possibly in talks with AAA on doing something really similar, that's also going to be a big benefit for them. But here's the thing. This is not the only time that WWE and AAA worked together back in the early 90s.
Yeah, they worked together in the 90s.
Yeah, Pena and Mr. McMahon had a lot of stuff. I think there was a Royal Rumble when a lot of the people involved in that Royal Rumble were from AAA.
Right.
Mil Mascaras did a jumping off the top rope to eliminate himself because Mil Mascaras is a selfish prick.
Right.
But that's still a cross-promotional thing. So WWE, I mean, over 60 years has been fairly open regarding that. And this is just within the scope of wrestling.
Right.
We didn't talk about books or movies or television programs or anything like that. Because
we don't talk about the fact that...
Because we'll be here forever.
Right. And we don't talk about the fact that a lot of championships in the WWE right now are held by people who are traditionally non-wrestlers. Like, Logan Paul. I mean, that is a cross promotion in of itself.
Right. I mean, that's just a net benefit for everybody.
Right.
So
Matt McAfee being on commentary, that is a cross promotional tactic.
Right.
Like, they've always done cross promotional stuff.
Exactly. And everything that WWE touching right now has just been a net benefit.
Yeah.
Pat McAfee is one of the biggest sports podcasters in the world right now. He just signed a huge deal. And Joe Rogan interviews a bunch of wrestlers all the time.
Right.
The Undertaker, he's retired. He's doing his own podcast, and he still does stuff with WWE, and that's really great there. TNA's doing better than I think they really ever have been, at least in recent memory, after 10 years of this. So that's great. If AAA works with WWE, you don't think that they would be absolutely to the moon, especially given their previous working relationship, which we'll cover here soon. It's just been a great thing all the way around for everybody. And I'm not just talking about with WWE as a company. Look at the wrestlers. They become their own influencers.
Right.
Becky Lynch is cross-promotional now. Seth Rollins is cross-promotional now. Ric Flair was back in the day. The Rock, John Cena, I could go on and on. They all start with the WWE. Now, with all the positives about cross-promotional with wrestling companies, let's talk about some negatives. Because AEW, every promotion that they have touched,
besides TNA, they have poached their talent from.
Not just poached their talent, it's been net negative. Negative. With AAA in their working relationship with CMLL, AEW had to agree to CMLL that any wrestler that is AAA affiliated could not compete on the same show. And I'm not just talking about the active competitors.
Right.
If they even are signed with AEW, Rush and Ray Phoenix couldn't compete on shows that had CMLL stars because CMLL did not want them to.
Right.
Because they're petty, dumb bitches.
Right.
So, to my knowledge, they've relaxed that.
Right.
So I'm at the very least happy that they are like, okay, they're signed with AEW.
Right.
But look at but they did poach their talent.
Yeah, they did.
Pentagon, I mean, he's making some appearances, but his priority has to be AEW.
Yep. But let's talk about people that they blatantly. So they have Ray Phoenix and Pentagon, but then they also now have
Bandito, Commander.
Yeah.
There are a few others.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the biggest victim of this.
Yeah, they're a victim. This is a victim.
New Japan.
Yep.
Their entire main event scene pretty much has been obliterated.
Yeah, pretty much.
The world champion is on a guy who was never signed with New Japan and Jon Moxley. And they're just fighting. There's no net positive.
No.
Their ratings have tanked.
You mean New Japan?
Yeah, this is all New Japan. This is all New Japan. They're having a real struggle rebuilding stars because there's just nobody to face them that is credible enough, and there's not enough of them.
Right.
So they have just been in a net loss, and they're scrambling. Nobody, to my knowledge, is really watching New Japan. It's been dead in the water.
Yeah.
Dead in the water.
And you just look at that, and the what we're trying to get at is that if you look at, for example, the G1, which is happening right now, and you look at the G1 a couple of years ago, like there's no comparison as to which one was better.
Yeah.
It, like had more star power attached to it. I'm sure the matches are fine, but there just seems to be a lack of real star power.
Yeah, and it's just going to make everything incredibly predictable, and nobody is going to watch it.
Right.
And the experiment with New Japan into America has pretty much been on a limb.
It's failed, but that is not AEW's fault. That is New Japan's fault.
Stardom is another great example of a company that has just been absolutely eviscerated, and I blame AEW for it.
Now, why would you blame AEW for that? Because I think the real reason why it's been eviscerated is because Rossi was fired.
Well, Rossi was fired, but then Mercedes Moné left them without any sort of help whatsoever.
Right.
The working relationship with Stardom and New Japan has been just a total flop.
Right.
Because that's just not what it is. Rossi leaving, essentially, and where Tony Khan is celebrating, you don't think that maybe he had maybe just a little bit of pull regarding that? Maybe he's like, we're not going to work with you anymore if Rossi is in charge.
Right.
Something there is fishy.
Yeah.
And here's another positive. WWE working with Mari Gold.
Yeah.
This is a brand new promotion, and they're making waves, record-breaking sellouts. Their shows, to my knowledge, have been very good. Look at Rossi leaving.
Yeah.
And all of those stars leaving. That huge exodus.
Yeah. Because people are loyal to Rossi.
Yeah. So, and with Tony Khan celebrating, it gives, I'm not blaming anybody, but I'm putting my finger right here and saying, why did Rossi, the founder of the company, go? It doesn't make sense. Right. So, but let's continue on with the negatives here. Because AEW, and you are wrong about something. You are right that they did not poach any talent from Impact Wrestling. But when Kenny Omega was champion, they had the lowest ratings, period. Kenny Omega had a stranglehold on that title. And thank God Christian won it, and he was defending it a little more frequently until he dropped it to Alexander. But that was a net negative all the way around because they were beating everybody.
And it was known that, I mean, it has been stated that their relationship did not go as planned.
Yeah.
It did not go as well. And that came from, I believe came straight from Scott D'Amore.
Yep.
Or maybe it came from Don. I'm not sure exactly.
I think it came from Scott D'Amore because Scott D'Amore was in charge at that time.
Right. But he did state that the working relationship just wasn't good.
Yeah, because nobody from TNA was promoted on AEW.
Right.
Who was going over to AEW from TNA? Not to my direct knowledge. I mean, they took Ethan Page away.
Yeah.
But Ethan Page was not the biggest star. Alexander turned out to be the big guy.
Right.
But WWE ain't touching any of them.
Right. The only thing that I see is that WWE is luring one tag team from one wrestling promotion, and that is Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa. But we all knew that was inevitably going to happen.
Yeah, that was different. They didn't sit there and grab 20 of the main eventers.
They grabbed, because really, what is New Japan without Kazuchika Okada, without Will Ospreay, without
Will Ospreay? Mercedes Moné was signed with New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Yeah.
She was a draw for them.
Yeah.
You have Jay White. Mm-hmm. What is he doing now?
Juice Robinson,
yeah, another great one. Even though he wasn't a main eventer, he was upper mid card.
Yeah.
So CMLL will join the club of seeing how much of a net negative this is going to be.
Although so far, I think their relationship with CMLL is the best one so far. Just because, I don't really know exactly how the whole situation turns out, but I kind of want to see. But to me, I feel like AEW's learned from their mistakes in the past and are doing a little bit better with CMLL.
Do you think that they're going to improve from their past mistakes, or do you think it's going to? All right,
I don't, because CMLL is a basket case in of itself.
CMLL is a very interesting company, and people are like, oh my god, look at they fill up that building. It's like, well, A, they own the building, Arena Mexico, and two, that building has been there for like 60 years, and the company's been around for 91 years.
And that, I think, is the reason why I think the CMLL working relationship is going to go a little bit better, is because there's just so much more loyalty in that company.
If CMLL thinks that they're going to get any sort of positive stranglehold,
they have done a lot of good things so far. Like CMLL and AEW's working relationship has been very positive, I think, for both promotions, because they're both getting featured on each other's shows very frequently. But
the problem is that you're wrong on at least the AEW side. I don't know what the ratings are on CMLL side.
I don't know that either.
But AEW has just been hemorrhaging. They have been absolutely down in the dumps the entire time. It's how much of the exposure is he going to get if the working relationship with WWE and AAA goes through? CMLL is going to get absolutely obliterated every time.
So I don't know.
I mean, there's already a decent working relationship with AAA and WWE because that's where Dragon Lee came from.
Right.
But he was already gone.
Right. But that's about all I have. That's about all I have to say about that one.
Yep, that was really it there. But I kind of want to at least sort of land on a positive here before we get into the match. The match is really short. It's fine. I do agree with you that so far the working relationship with CMLL and AEW has been positive.
Yeah, it's been the best out of every company I've seen so far.
Right, but the track record speaks for itself.
Yeah.
One positive company does not necessarily make up for the 3 or 4 that have just been hurt by AEW. And if WWE has that working relationship with AAA, what's going to happen with that?
Right.
What's going to happen with that with CMLL and AEW?
Right.
It's like this is how you really do it, kids.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. With everything sort of going back and forth, I thought this was an interesting discussion. Let us know what you think. If we missed anything, let us know as well. And let's get into this match.
All right.